This podcast does not provide medical nor legal advice. Please listen to the complete disclosure at the end of the recording.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Everyone Dies, the podcast where we talk about serious illness, dying, death, and bereavement. I'm Marianne Matzo, a nurse practitioner, and I use my experience from working as a nurse for 45 years now, Charles.
Wow, jeepers.
To help answer your questions about what happens at the end of life.
And I'm Charlie Navarrete, an actor in New York City, fielding concerns you may have, such as a healthcare proxy form, and someone who will fight for your end-of-life decisions when you are incapacitated. We believe that the more you know, the better prepared you are to make advanced care choices before you need to make difficult decisions.
Please relax and get yourself something to eat and drink, and thank you for spending the next hour with Charlie and me as we talk about caregiving for a loved one with dementia and what happens after they die. In the first half, David has a reading about mindfulness, and Charlie has our recipe of the week. In the second half, I have part 3 of my interview series with Michael Porter, where we talk about the death of his wife and the loss of his caregiving role. And in our third half, Charlie has a journal entry from a man whose wife has dementia and lives in a memory care center.
We are continuing our recipes from famous people by sharing the recipe for Mark Wahlberg's mother's macaroni salad. Because who doesn't love a good macaroni salad at a funeral lunch? You can take a minute here and folks can figure out if there's someone like that. Mark's brother, Paul, has a Mediterranean Italian restaurant in Hingham, Massachusetts. So you can go there to have a taste if you are in the neighborhood. David?
Hello, everyone. Today I thought I'd read from a book that helped me quite a bit with mindfulness called Moment by Moment, The Art and Practice of Mindfulness by Dr. Jerry Braza, PhD. And we'll include this on our show notes. Several years ago, I attended a workshop presented by Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, the famous physician who has been a pioneer in understanding of death and dying. What I remember most about this experience were the stories that she shared about her work with the dying. After working with thousands of dying patients, Dr. Kubler-Ross observed that what most people remember most at the end of their lives were moments. Business, work, deadlines, bills, degrees, possessions, all assume little or no importance to the dying person in comparison to the special moments with their loved ones. So whether a person is close to death or living as a child does, what really seems to matter are moments. To live more moments as if they were our first or our last may itself provide enough motivation to become more mindful, but mindfulness offers even more benefits. Stress reduction. 60 to 90% of all illness may be directly or indirectly related to stress, and stress reduction is a major concern in today's world. Often stress is the result of being overcommitted or having a tendency to always hurry. Living in the moment may clearly be one of the best kept secrets for effective stress reduction and wellness. According to a family practice physician, when the waiting room and all the examining rooms are full, my best coping strategy is to become completely mindful of the person I'm with. Increase productivity. Effectiveness and productivity are enhanced when a person's concentration is improved. When the mind wanders, it's difficult to concentrate. Preoccupation with the past or the future, coupled with polyphasic thinking or many thoughts at one time, results in unfulfilled activities, tasks, and relationships. Studies have shown that by developing mindfulness, individuals can concentrate more effectively and thus become more productive. Enhanced relationships. Think about the most important people in your life and recall the last interactions you had with them. Were you really with them? Whether personally or professionally, our presence speaks louder than words. A nursing supervisor recently realized that she interacted with her colleagues as she was usually working with charting or other tasks at the same time. By truly being present and attentive, you can let the other person know that he or she is the most important to you in that moment. The best gift you can give to another is the gift of your full presence. Joy. In our attempts to hurry, we frequently miss the opportunity to enjoy the little pleasures that we are happening moment by moment. How many sunsets, smiles, and small adventures have you missed? As you develop the skill and art of mindfulness, you can learn to work and play in less frantic, more enjoyable, and more focused manner. The result is inevitably the experience of more joy in your life. Peace. Violence is one of society's top concerns today. National and local governments desperately seek strategies to curb the onslaught of violent behavior with gun control laws, curfews, stricter penalties, and more prisons. Yet the solution really lies in each and every one of us. The current Dalai Lama, a Nobel Prize-winning recipient, has said, "When you have inner peace, we can be at peace with those around us." To be peaceful requires a practice or a way of being that can break the cycle of violence and hatred so pervasive in many parts of our lives. The practice of mindfulness can help us discover the path to peace. Marianne and Charlie, any questions or comments?
Thank you for that. That's, I think, good for us to read and even consider pick up the book and even use that as a mindfulness exercise in terms of focusing yourself on what's really important.
Yeah, and then even what's that Billy Joel song? Was one of the lyrics says, leave a tender moment alone. And David, to your point, yeah, it's just that you are in some moment and excuse me, and I'm just thinking of last night. Last night I attended a meeting where the idea was just generational, that there would be young people there and older people there, and it was just interesting. Some people would be focused on what was happening right there in the moment. And others just started fussing with their iPhones and not being in that moment. And everything everything changed when someone said, "So what do you do, Charlie?" And the only thing I mentioned was everyone dies. That got everyone's attention. And I'm not saying in a positive way. People just started flipping out. But I thought about it later, what you were saying, David, about, mindfulness and being in that moment. With a lot of people, they were just absolutely uncomfortable with that. Just the idea of, of just talking and discussing death. They were not in the moment, but suddenly all their fears and anxieties came out. And it's literally about half the crowd. But it's just that. I mean, people, that stopped people from looking at their iPhones and looking around the room. Yeah. So, yeah. And that's the thing. Just leave a moment alone. Just like what you were saying, David. Sometimes you don't have to comment. You just listen to what someone is saying, take it all in, and just that. That's it. Yeah. So please go to our webpage for the recipe for Mark Wahlberg's mom's macaroni salad, in addition to resources for this program. We ask for your support in the form of a tax-deductible contribution so that we can continue to offer you quality programming. Thank you in advance for going to our website to make your donation, as well as following us on Facebook and Instagram. Visit us at www.everyonedies.org. That's every, the number 1 dies.org. Marianne?
Thanks, Charlie. Today we'll be sharing our third interview with Michael Porter regarding what he learned from caring for his wife with Huntington's disease and dementia. When I first interviewed Michael, his wife Janet of 35 years was receiving hospice support at home. Just prior to this interview, Janet was briefly hospitalized and died. In this interview, we talk about how he is seeing his life after Janet's death. He says that he thinks men see death of a spouse as an amputation, that there's a part of themselves that is missing, but that women grieve the loss of the relationship. So let's have a listen and see if his thoughts resonate with you.
Today, we have, I don't know if our listeners have noticed, but I tend to get kind of attached to our guests, and I follow what's going on in their lives and have them back, some people repeatedly, to talk about caregiving and these kinds of issues. And we have back today Michael Porter. Mike, how are you?
Doing good. Thank you.
Doing good. Now, for those of you who might remember, Mike's wife, Janet, had Huntington's disease. And when we last talked to him, she was receiving hospice support. And I saw on Facebook, which is where I get a lot of my news, that Janet had died. And I want to offer my condolences to you, Mike. And
Thank you.
And we talked about that we would kind of talk about that on the radio show, what ultimately happened and what's happened to you since.
Okay. Well, as you said, your lead-in, Janet, she, her condition started deteriorating rapidly. That the nurse that was the hospice nurse that was seeing her in the house in our home indicated, thought it looked like she was becoming severely impacted from not being able to go to the bathroom. So they said, well, we need to pick her up, take her into our inpatient facility, get her, freed up, so to speak, and get her stabilized, and she can come back home. Mm-hmm. She was there. They picked her up Friday evening. We got a phone call that night confirming that she'd arrived. They had done whatever procedures they needed to do, and she was, opened back up again, so to speak. And we made arrangements to go see her the next day, Saturday. And so Janet, Franny and I spent most of the day with Janet, sitting with her and not really talking with her because she really wasn't awake. I'm not even sure the extent to which she was aware that we were there. Mm-hmm. But so we had all day Saturday, and then as we were leaving, I told her that we were going. We'll be back. We would be back the next day. I said, but look, if you get the opportunity to go. Franny and I will be fine. We're taken care of. We'll be good. So if you have a chance to go. And then I got a phone call about 2:35 Sunday morning saying that Janet had passed about 2:30. Wow. And so that was, if you get on my blog, there's pictures. It was funny. She passed on a Sunday morning, the same time that my normal blog post was going up. So, and I already had one set up for her for a memorial for her, and so I let the normal one, which I had already queued up, I let it go ahead and auto post, and then I posted just to my Facebook followers the memorial, so that it would try to draw some distinction between clarity between the two. But I mean, that was January 10th. And I was supposed to start a new job 2 days later. That didn't happen.
That was planned. Because I saw what looked like you had a new job. And
yes.
Did you also move?
Yes. We moved up to Mineral Wells, Texas, which is a beautiful little town. It's about 16,000 people. I mean, this is about as different from Houston as you can get. And it's absolutely glorious up here. I mean,
so that move was planned before Janet died also?
Yes. And, it was going to be, I mean, everybody was saying she's very near the end. And so we just said, well, we'll take it one day at a time. And if it comes up, then we got to figure out how to move Janet up to northern Texas. Well, we'll do that. But give a sense of how long a move that would have been. You could take the state of Pennsylvania, lay it between Houston and where we're at right now, and still have a lot of space on each end.
Wow.
It's about 5.5 hours. It's about a 5.5 hour drive from Houston.
How far are you from the Oklahoma border?
Oh, I'm not sure. In the morning when I'm going into work on AM, I can pick up some Oklahoma radio stations. So I would guess maybe a couple hours, another 3 hours, something like that. But it's we're right on Interstate 20, and it's a beautiful place. I mean, to give you a sense of how quiet it is, when we lived in Houston, our television, the volume on it was normally set at like 25, 30 on a 100 scale of 0 to 100, right? Here, listening to the same TV, listening to the same programming, the volume is set to like 10 or 12.
Wow.
I mean, there's no traffic, there's no sirens going by, there's no motorcycles roaring past, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful place. And it's been a real blessing for us, one of the things that has sort of been coming up in spades for me is the whole issue of, all right, what do I do now? Not so much on the professional level, because I got my new job, and so that's sort of set out for me. But I mean, on a personal level, what do I do now? The thing that I realized is I was Janet's husband for 35 years, and so I was fairly good at that. But now that job's gone, and what is there for me to do now? And
I wanted to ask you about that, because when we've talked in the past about caregiving, you had said you talked about taking your spouse role and putting in a box when you're the caregiver. And so I was wondering, with Janet's death, do you take out your role as spouse and grieve as her spouse, or is it a grief of your role as caregiver, or does it all get wrapped up in one? How is that, Mike?
Well, actually, it's interesting. Just the other day, I was reading an article, and it was in England, I think. They did a survey, and they did a study with like a couple hundred widows and about 150 widowers, and sort of tracked them, and they found out that within 24 months of the death of their spouse, something like 60 to 70% of the men had remarried. During that same time period, something like 30% of the women had remarried. And as they were doing as they were interviewing people, they were trying to, what explains this difference. And one of the things they came up with was that men and women just fundamentally experience the death of a spouse differently. They're saying, and I cannot speak of their observation of women because it's not being a woman, but I can tell you, when I read what they said about men, I said, yeah, that's it. I've been trying to figure out how to express what I was thinking and feeling, and that was it. But what they said was, well, what they said was
I'm dying to know, Mike.
Well, what they said is that women experience the loss of a spouse primarily in the form of relationships. He's not there to talk to anymore. He's not there to cuddle with anymore. He's not there to play cards with, or to just to have a good time, hang out with. They grieve they miss it primarily in terms of relationships. Men are very different. Men are completely different. While men do experience those sorts of losses, for men, the primary emotion is they experience the death of a spouse like an amputation. Like, I lost my leg. I lost my arm. I mean, there's a part of me that is just missing now, which is a fundamentally different way of, as I said, when I saw that, I said, yeah, that's it. that's what I've been feeling. And that it's, so it's been sort of working through a lot of that stuff. The things that I've been writing about lately, I've been writing this past week. Sunday, the article was on PTSD and PTSD as a result of being a caregiver. And I got one particular comment that just, I read that and it says, yeah, this is why I do the writing, because this woman's saying, my husband has HD. I've been caring for him for 12 years, and I keep feeling like I have PTSD. I'm experiencing some of those things, but I haven't been raped. I haven't been to war. I haven't been to any of those things, but that's what it feels like. And she says, I thought I was going crazy. And she says, when I read what you wrote, I saw, I'm not crazy. I really can have PTSD as a result of being a caregiver.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then the week before that, I wrote about reentry. As a caregiver who has for weeks, months, years had your life sort of revolving around taking care of one other person. Now that person has gone, and it's like you're considering now, how do I reenter? How do I reenter life? How do I reenter society? How
So how are you doing that, Mike?
Well, the first thing I'm doing is I'm not allowing myself to do what I think I want to do. Okay,
Which is
you think about it. I mean, most animals, human beings or non-human, you get injured. When they get injured, they want to cuddle up. They want to find someplace dark and quiet where they can sort of bunker up until they're feeling better. And for me, that was a very strong reaction. I just want to find a nice little house. I want to, if it could be like out in the middle of the country with no telephones, no television, and nothing. Electricity, okay, maybe I need my computer, but but then I realized that no, that is not what I'm going to need. Is I need to be out. I need to be involved. And so it's, going to church, going to work, meeting people. Last Sunday, very sweet lady that I met in the HC support forums, and she lives over in the Dallas area. And Franny and I, we met her for dinner after church. To sit around and talk and have a nice dinner and conversation. And it was a wonderful time. And but it's forcing yourself, I guess, is what I did. Is to get out, is to say, my instinctive response, which is to find a hole to crawl into until I'm feeling better, isn't going to work, because what will happen is I'll stay in the hole and I'll never feel better until somebody really does put me in a hole. So that's a large chunk of it, and I've been doing I've been doing a lot of reading and even some additional writing beyond my blog. Is I started is I've actually am it was kind of interesting. I just started in the process by just I was listening to some music and words of a story just started going through my head, inspired by the music. So I just started writing the words down, and it's turned into 2.5 books now.
Wow!
And it's yeah, and what's funny is I didn't even know what it was about. I was 3 weeks into writing on it when I showed it to someone. My sister up in Indiana. I showed it to her, and she says, "Oh, this is about you and Janet." It is. And then I looked at it. It's like, well, yeah, I guess it is. It is. And it's definitely an allegorical fantasy type thing, because the main character, the first other character that he meets in the story is a griffin. So it's half lion, half eagle. And so it's definitely an allegorical story, but it's sort of an allegorical retelling of my life, my story, Janet's story, and sort of going that direction. But it's been an interesting process. And
Did you end up publishing that?
It is, well, the first 2 books are in various stages of pre-production right now. They're written, they're in the hands of an editor who's going through them.
This isn't just since Janet died, is it?
No. I started on this probably, no, I didn't write that in 3 weeks, in 2.5 months or so.
That's why I was confused. It's like, wait, what?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, well, the thing is, I started working on that, and then it just sort of grew. But more specifically, on the point of grieving, that's one of the big things that I noticed after Janet passed, is I got these books from hospice about how to grieve and what it means to mourn and all that kinds of stuff, right? And if Janet had been hit by a bus, or had died, or had a catastrophic heart attack and fallen down dead, they would have been great books. Okay, but the point is, but when they talked about long-term illnesses, they talked in terms of weeks and months, not years. And it's a very different experience. You're taking care of someone who's slowly dying day by day by day over a period of years. It's a very different experience than,
Sure.
And so, it's all the steps of grieving get all mixed up and jumbled together, because it goes on for so long that, it's like, well, yeah, I'm grieving. I'm feeling the grief and I'm letting go, but then I'm not, and it's just it just gets very complicated. And so that's something I do. And I wrote a post about that as well. Is that when you're dealing with something very long term, like HD, like Alzheimer's, like Parkinson's, it's a very different experience than if you, as I said, if your loved one got hit by a bus or something.
Do you find that women are aware of Janet's death and kind of wooing you or bringing you food or things like
that? If they're doing what?
If they're wooing you, like trying to
wooing. Wooing, yes. There have been a couple, yes. There was one. I realized a couple 3 weeks into the whole process that I had reached a milestone of sorts. Is that a friend that I knew, her husband also had HD. She sent me a message. She says, "Oh, I just heard that you moved up to Mineral Wells, and it's really interesting. We have a really good friend that lives up there, and she's such a nice person. And she lost her husband 5 years ago, but she's really, really nice." It's like, okay, people are setting me up now. But it's but there are some folks I've met. One in particular that just a delightful person, and it's just I have not run into like my stepfather. One time he was telling me about when his first wife died before he married my mom. When his first wife died, this gal from church called him, and she says, "I just heard about your wife's passing. I'm so sorry. How about coming over for dinner Friday?" Mm-hmm. And he says, "Well, I can't. I can't come."
That's what I was getting to, because that's very common.
Yeah. She says, "How about Friday?" He says, "Well, I can't come Friday." She says, "Why not?" She says, "Friday is her funeral." "Oh, how about Saturday?"
Oh my God.
It was just, it was one of these, relative, forehead slaps, but I have not run into anything anywhere near that. The folks, as I said, I've met, are just very, very nice. And the one lady in particular, she's just a wonderful human being. But it's, but no, I have not either. I haven't run into any wooing, or I'm just too dense I'm too dense and out of practice to recognize it.
Well, my husband was a widower, and he had been married for over 40 years. And mm-hmm. I had kind of asked him the same thing after we were getting to know each other. He's like, "Oh, no, nobody ever." And I'm thinking, you just didn't see it. Because it's extremely rare, mm-hmm. for, there's a lot more older women than there are older men. And so,
Yeah. And actually, I mean, getting back to that article we were talking about originally, that was one of the other conclusions they came to, was that women are just better prepared emotionally for the loss of a spouse than a husband is, than a man is. And it's the way they put it is that women, they have role models. Their dad died and now their mother's a widow. Their grandfather died and now grandma's a widow. And they have aunts and all these women that whose husbands have died, and they're saying, "Oh, okay, all right, it's horrible and it's painful, but I can see that it's survivable." Okay.
Well, or, you go to restaurants and you see 6 women sitting with one, older guy. And what it is, one of those women's husbands has not died. So he goes around and with her, and they pick up all of their friends, because they probably were, the men probably were at those luncheons too before they died. And so there's the one guy and the 6 ladies. And that's not uncommon.
Yeah. And it's, in churches, a lot of, country churches still have what they call the widow's corner. It's a group. Yeah, it's a group of pews where ladies whose husbands have died. That's where they all sit together. In one little corner of the sanctuary. And it's typically not formal. It's sort of an informal agreement. Everybody sort of knows that the first 3 rows on the right hand side, if you're male or if you're male and married, you don't sit there. And that's for the widows. But it's one thing that I've discovered in doing the reading is that we're actually getting more and more parity between men and women in terms of numbers of widows versus widowers. They did this again. This, I believe it was in England. They did a study over a couple-year period, and they realized that the number of excess women, so to speak, to men is only about 2 to 1. And so which means
still, if you're the one who doesn't have the guy,
yeah,
you're still not exactly good odds,
yeah. But it's the kind of thing where it's like you learning to enjoy things again, different things again.
And having some time for yourself, are you finding that that's a big difference?
Yeah.
Because the caregiving was pretty intense, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. And it was nice to not have to do anything for a while. But that actually, for me at least, that actually wore off pretty quick. A couple of weeks, and it was like, okay, now I don't have anything to do with my life again, and now I'm getting bored again. What do I do now? And so, that sort of, for me at least, that sort of relaxation of, wow, I don't have to worry about taking care of them anymore, that wore off real fast for me. I don't know what it would be like for anyone else, but, and then it's finding other things, part of it is, we were moving here. So, I had to find a house, and then we moved in. And the night we arrived, we walk in and we see there was no washer and dryer, which I knew about. Walked in the kitchen, also found out there was no refrigerator, which I didn't know about.
Oh, no.
So it's like, now we don't have any place, keep food cold. So, but luckily that was just before the big cold snap they had up here. So, the back seat of our car became the freezer. Our garage was our refrigerator because it was close to the house, so it didn't get quite as cold. And so we were able to get by for a week or so until we were able to get a refrigerator. But it was so there's that. There's getting all that stuff set up, buying furniture that we had given away in Pearland, because when Janet got bad, she couldn't make it upstairs, so we got a hospice set us up with a hospital bed, which we put in our living room, which means the easy chair had to go away, the sofa had to go away, and so it was. Reacquiring some of those sorts of things. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff, just to sort of keep you busy and keep
getting used to a new job and.
Yeah. And then the job has been great. It's the first job I've ever had where I walked in the door, And my boss said, look, the software that we have right now, we know stinks. It's horrible. Just write whatever it is we need. Just fix it. Just make it, start with a clean piece of paper and write what we need.
Wow.
So I mean, that was a very nice situation.
Cool.
Because
How's
you
Brandy doing with all this?
Actually, she's doing well. She's her boyfriend came up, flew up from Houston last weekend, so she had a couple days with him, and then she went out to dinner last Sunday with this lady and myself, and she had a ball. She says she's a really nice lady, and so it's she's doing well. I think she's doing well, but a large chunk of this just keeps coming back to the whole question of faith. Is that in some ways grief, being a caregiver for someone with a long-term illness is in some ways is like being an alcoholic. I mean, it's a problem that is bigger than you. You can't solve it by yourself. You can't do it effectively by yourself. You need support. You need support to be bigger than you. And in the AA community, they talk about their higher power, that kind of thing. And something else I've been doing is there's a little local radio station, KATX, here in the area, and every morning between about 8:30 and 9 o'clock, they schedule guests to come in and talk about like community improvement and how to plan for your retirement and all those sorts of things. And I was listening to that, and I said, this is a very rural area, and that one of the local hospitals was just bragging about, hey, we got a nephrologist now. So if you have a problem with your kidneys, you don't have to drive to Fort Worth anymore. And so I kept thinking, well, it's very likely they don't have neurologists, social workers, people who are knowledgeable about some of these diseases. And so I called up the radio station. I said, hey, this is where I'm at. My wife just passed away from this condition called Huntington's disease. And it might be worthwhile to have like a half hour for me to come in and just talk to me, and we can talk about how to deal with it. And the guy said, sounds like a great idea. So I came in, we did that. And that was like last Friday. Friday morning, I was on the radio, and it went so well. The
You're
guy
already
asked,
stepping out on me, is what you're telling me.
Well, the guy on the radio says, hey, while we were on the air, he said, hey, why don't you come on back? And we continued the conversation. But it worked well. It worked out. It was really kind of neat. And in case anybody's interested, KATX is the radio station. They're 97.7. They're a small little station, but they have a live streaming link. So on April 9th, 8:30 in the morning, Texas time.
You're going to get your own show. You know that.
Well, I don't know about that yet, but
well, I'm just warning you that that's what's going to happen.
Thank you. But as I said, April 9th, 8:30 in the morning, Texas time. Look up KATX, and you can. They have a button on their website where you can listen to a live stream of whatever they're broadcasting right at that moment, and you can tune in, you can listen. But yeah.
So now that you've got another radio station, are you still going to come back and talk to us?
Absolutely. I mean, the pay is great.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Because the next thing we're going to want to know is about your love life. So, you got to get working on that, Michael. Well,
okay.
Thanks for spending some time with me and talking with me about this. And we're just, very nosy about your life and want to know what's going on. So I offer you, our condolences regarding Janet's death. But you strike me as a very resilient man of many talents. I'm looking forward to see what happens next.
We have a third journal block from Greg, whose wife of 50 years is in a memory care center. I am going to pose a question for you. When my wife was in the earlier stages of dementia, I know what my answer would have been. Well, here's the question. Have you thought about what you are going to do after your caregiver duties are over? My answer 3 years ago would have been, I don't know what I'm going to do 10 minutes from now. How could I possibly have time to think about my future after caregiving? That may well be what you're thinking now, but that won't keep me from asking the question again. Are you doing anything to prepare yourself for the after your responsibilities as a caregiver are over? If the answer is no, I wouldn't be a bit surprised. You may not realize that I can see you reading my posts, but I can. And here's what I see. 1. Some of you need new pajamas, robes, and 2, you shaking your head negatively in answering my question. Frequently, I imagine the surviving caregiver, you, feels lost. When you have spent most of your waking hours focused on them and what they need and what they like to eat and what they like to do, it is quite possible that you have lost your own identity. Being a caregiver can be all-consuming. It requires balancing doctor visits, tracking medications, and managing mood shifts. You likely have cooked meals, cleaned the house, and bathed and groomed your person. Plus, you spend hours of your time worrying about the health of your loved ones, finances, and for many caregivers, your own health. When the person we are caring for dies, sorry for my bluntness, and our caregiving duties end, we may feel lost and adrift. I have heard it explained that you actually have 2 voids to fill. One is the loss of a loved one and the grief that follows. 2, your job. Being a caregiver is a full-time job, and you will lose that too. First task, embrace the grief. It's a whole different topic to explore. Grief is complicated, maybe more so for caregivers because it is sometimes mixed with a sense of relief. As the end approaches, their needs are so immense and emotionally difficult, the immediate reaction may be relief for you, and the pain of our loved one is no longer experiencing. There's no timetable for grief, and don't let others tell you differently. Your grief, your timetable. Eventually, you will need to move forward, often alone. I'm slowly preparing both mentally and physically for that future. I don't want to do it, and I don't dwell on it at this point. I am practicing better self-care so that my after is more enjoyable. I am participating in water aerobics 6 days a week before I go visit my wife. I am eating healthier and losing weight. It is also providing benefits for the here and now. I am happier and healthier and more mobile than I was 6 months ago. I plan to be even healthier 6 months from now. I am a better caretaker because of it, so my wife is benefiting too. I am dabbling in art. Trust me, I am not a natural artist, but I'm enjoying painting and looking forward to getting better at it. I am writing more. Some of you have suggested I write a book. That will probably not happen, but I haven't taken it completely off the board. I plan to have at least one knee replaced so that I can walk more and enjoy nature. Someday I will travel Route 66 from Chicago to California. I want to be able to see some of it on foot, standing on the corner in Winslow, Arizona. So you see, little by little, I am preparing myself physically for the transition. I have no idea yet how to get emotionally prepared. I love my girlfriend so much that I don't know how I would survive without her. But survive I must. Start to ponder how you will proceed in your after. It is a good thing to have hope. Start peeking into the future a bit. What could it hurt? P.S. Don't forget to order the new pajamas, please. Some of yours are getting a little threadbare. And with that, please stay tuned for the continuing saga of Everyone Dies, and thank you for listening. Sand through an hourglass made of lead is still sand through an hourglass. This is Charlie Navarrete, and from UN Owen, you make plans for the birth of your child, make plans for the end of your life.
And I'm Marianne Matzo, and we'll see you next week. Remember, every day is a gift.
This podcast does not provide medical advice. All discussion on this podcast, such as treatments, dosages, outcomes, charts, patient profiles, advice, messages, and any other discussion are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment. Always seek the advice of your primary care practitioner or other qualified health providers with any questions that you may have regarding your health. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard from this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. Everyone Dies does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, practitioners, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned in this podcast. Reliance on any information provided in this podcast by persons appearing on this podcast at the invitation of Everyone Dies or by other members is solely at your own risk.